Okay, good morning. Okay, so let me proceed with the presentation. This is a presentation on land-based sources of marine pollution as environmental stressor. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah? So before I present the stressors that are related to land-based activities, I think it would be important for us to understand what we mean by the pressures. And by the word pressure, we mean activities that stress or exert pressures on the environment. And these could be due to production or consumption processes. And in terms of production and consumption processes, we can view these in terms of excessive use of environmental resources, changes in land use, or even emissions of chemicals and waste to air, water, and soil. Next. We can also note that 80% of the marine pollution normally originates from land. So when it comes to management of coastal and marine environment, you cannot forget about land, because most of the pollution, 80% of the pollution, has been demonstrated by various research studies to originate from land. And at UNEP, there used to be the Global Program of Action for the Protection of Marine Environment from Land-Based Activities, which was dealing with land-based sources and activities related to pollution. I'm not sure whether that particular program is still active, but I understand they were very active when it came to issues dealing with marine pollution due to land-based activities. And their focus areas was mainly in terms of the marine litter, nutrients, and wastewater, particularly those which originates from land. Next. Within the Wheel Lab TDA, I think Tuda Alpha has already mentioned that particular document that was delivered by the Wheel Lab project under Nairobi Convention. That is the TDA, Transboundary Diagnostic Analysis for Land-Based Sources and Activities Affecting Pollution Within the Coastal and Marine Environment of the Western Indian Ocean region. That particular process, which was driven by experts within the region, was able to identify 3 problem areas. Problem area number 1 was the physical alteration and destruction of habitats. And problem area number 2 was alteration of the river flows and sediment loads. And problem area number 3 was water and sediment quality degeneration. I'll be talking about these areas in more detail as we continue with this particular presentation. Next. So in terms of the problem area number 1, degradation of the critical habitats and ecosystems, the TDA for the Western Indian Ocean region was able to demonstrate that there are many drivers of degradation of the critical coastal and marine ecosystem in the region. Of course, this includes harvesting of resources. There's also the problem of discharge of sewage and wastewater into our marine and coastal environment. Dumping of solid waste is a big problem within our coastline. Also, the changes in longshore sediment transport dynamics. Smothering due to sedimentation, particularly when it comes to the coral reef ecosystem and also the mangrove ecosystem. Smothering due to sedimentation is a key issue within our region, particularly within the Kenya coast. For example, in 1998, we were able to conduct some studies within Mwache Estuary, Mwache Creek, within Portris Creek system, and we were able to assess the damage that was due to heavy deposition of the regional sediments from Mwache River. And the huge segment of the mangrove forest within the Mwache Creek was almost completely destroyed by the huge sediment deposition event that took place during the El Nino of 1997-1998. In that particular photograph, set of photographs there, you can see us at Mwache Creek, and you can see Dr. Joseph Kamau. At that time, he was my technician. We were doing the assessment together to assess the damage due to sedimentation at Mwache Estuary. There's a photo there showing the deposition of garbage, marine litter of the mangrove ecosystem. This also leads to the degradation of the ecosystem. Let's move to the next slide. And the degradation of the coastal and marine ecosystem in terms of the coral reefs and the seagrass beds, as the other presenters have already mentioned, we have various impacts, both environmental impacts as well as the socio-economic impacts. Briefly, I can highlight maybe environmental impacts. These include loss of vital ecosystem functions, you have decrease of loss of biodiversity, reduction in marine productivity, you have changes or decline in fish production yield within our coastal system, water quality changes. So there are many, environmental impacts, and also environmental impacts will lead to socioeconomic consequences, as mentioned in that particular slide. And once you degrade the ecosystems, you interfere with the livelihood systems of the local communities, you interfere with the income levels, you also mess up with the touristic or recreational value of the coastal environment. So there are various socio-economic consequences of destruction of our coastal marine ecosystem within our Kenyan coastline. Next. The second problem area that was identified under the wheel of TDA was alteration of freshwater flow and sediment load to the coastal zone. This was considered to be one of the major drivers of change within the coastal marine environment. And the major issues of concern were changes in terms of the quantity and quality of water within the estuaries. For example, Sabaki and Tana River estuaries at Kipini, where we have done extensive research to understand hydrological processes that determine deposition and transport of sediments within the longshore environment within that particular system. Some of the photographs there shows ourselves in the field when we were starting some study within the Tana River system to assess the sediment load transport to the coast at Kipini. And you can see the kind of extreme river discharges that some of these coast river systems within our environment demonstrate. The river system within the region exhibit major changes, and with the climate change, we expect to see extreme changes in stream flow, with extreme changes also in the sediment loads, with potential serious impacts within the coastal marine environment. Next. And the root causes of changes in the river flow to the coast are numerous. Of course, we know that the supply of sediments and also nutrients to the coast is important for sustainability and productivity of our coastal marine ecosystems. They bring nutrients, they bring sediments that are also critical for stabilizing our coastline. If you change the dynamics of sediment supply to the coast, the dynamics of supply of nutrients to the coast, you interfere with the coastal systems in terms of the stability of coastal productivity and also stability of the coastal shoreline, that's the beaches. And there are many causes of changes in the flow of our river system to the coast. And in this regard, I'm talking about the Tana River system and also the Sabaki River system. This has been occasioned mainly by the damming of River Tana. Within the River Tana system, there has been extensive construction of dams. And one of the major dams that has been constructed in that particular system is Masinga Dam, which is being shown in that particular slide, in one of the slides there. That dam traps an enormous quantity of sediments, leading to changes in the sediment load deposited at the Tana Delta. And that is bringing complications within that particular system in terms of inducing coastal shoreline change because of the changes in the sediment budget. We expect more exploitation of the Tana River system because of the construction of other mega dams, such as the Grand Falls hydroelectric dam. And we expect that that will cause major changes within the Tana River system. And I sympathize with the communities in the Tana River County who normally depends on the fluctuating water levels within the Tana River system, particularly the floods, for their agriculture, that is the flood recession agriculture. Once the huge dam, the Grand Falls Dam, is constructed, the flood menace within the lower Tana system will disappear. And also, what will disappear is also the flood recession agriculture. So we expect more poverty within the Tana River County and other communities living within that particular environment. So the drivers of change within our river systems include damming. Of course, we have also major urban water projects, also abstracting water from the Tana River system, from the Athi Galana system. We have water abstraction for the Kulalu Galana project, for irrigation project, which is taking a lot of water from the Athi River system. And also we have the issue of the climate change, which is inducing more variability in stream flow, complicating, hydrological dynamics of some of these river systems. So basically, these are some of the major drivers of change in the rivers that are flowing to the coast. Next. And for you to be able to offer, proper recommendations on what should be done by policymakers, resource management, officials within our government systems, you must be able to conduct proper hydrological investigations within our systems, both at echelon level, and also you need also to understand the dynamics which are taking place within the river basins. And there are various tools that can be applied to study hydrological processes within river basins in order to be able to generate data that can inform management processes. We can move to the next slide. So there are various impacts of alteration of freshwater flow to the coast. Once you alter, you change the flow of freshwater and also sediment load to the coast, you interfere with the sediment budget and nutrient budget within the coastline, and that will lead to shoreline erosion. If you go to Kipini today, the mouth of the river, there's a lot of erosion of the mouth of Tana River because of the changes in the sediment budget of that particular river. Once you also interfere with the flow of fresh water into the coast, you also induce other problems within our groundwater system. For example, there'll be greater intrusion of seawater into the groundwater aquifers, and that will complicate the availability of fresh water for touristic facilities along the Kenya coast. And I think actually most of the hotels located along the Kenya coast, they have major problems getting fresh water from their groundwater, systems, because already most of the groundwater has been affected by seawater intrusion, of course, due to sea level rise, but also because of the changes in the freshwater supply to the coast. Within the Tana River system at Kipini, we're able to demonstrate that the intrusion of seawater into the delta is already affecting the coastal agriculture within that particular system, because seawater, salty water is now entering into the farms during spring tides, and that is degrading agricultural lands. Also, changes in the river flow will also modify the riverine, estuarine, and the marine ecosystem community functions and the structures. It can also lead to changes in coastal habitats and biodiversity, and of course, huge supply of sediment off the coast leads to changes in the water quality in terms of turbidity. Next. The third problem area that was determined by the NBA process under Nairobi Convention, that is the TDA, was problem area number 3, that is water and sediment quality degradation. And within our Kenyan coastline, we experience major problems when it comes to pollution. This is one of the major drivers of change within our coastal and marine environment. And for us to be able to tackle this particular problem, we have to go beyond the coast, because some of the drivers are located further inland. For example, the pollution of Athi Galana River is originating all the way from Nairobi. Without engaging people in Nairobi, you cannot be able to deal with that particular problem, because I think more than 80% of the pollution of the Galana River is originating from the city of Nairobi. So we need to engage people in Nairobi to be able to tackle that particular problem. Otherwise, we're focusing only at the coast, at Malindi, at Sabaki estuary in Malindi. You won't be able to solve that particular problem. We have to move beyond the coast sometimes to be able to engage authorities who are responsible for management of other land-based activities for us to be able to have impact at the coastal level. But also within our coastline, we have major problems. We have major sources of pollution around Mombasa Island and other places. We have major pollution problem with marine litter, that is solid waste discharge within our coastal marine environment. Is a major problem that needs to be tackled. We're happy that NEMA is doing a good job in terms of banning of plastics, but the problem is still prevalent, and more effort needs to be directed towards control of illicit trade in plastic materials within the region. In terms of the problem of pollution, we have also microbial contamination, of course coming from sewage discharge into the coastal areas. Most of the water treatment systems have collapsed or they're not working perfectly. So raw sewage ends up into the coastal marine environment without any sort of treatment. We have also chemical pollution from industrial areas within the coast, particularly when you consider Mombasa Island. We have also pollution emanating from the industrial area, particularly when it rains. We have runoff, picking a lot of contaminants from the industrial area, and these are discharged into our Creeks Tudor at Portrees Creek. I mentioned the issue of solid waste. Litter is a major problem that needs a lot of effort in order to be able to deal with that particular problem. Then the problem of nutrient over-enrichment is also an issue which is associated with the discharge of sewage and agricultural waste into our river system. We need to have a balance in terms of the discharge of nutrients into our coastal system. If you oversupply nutrients due to pollution of our river systems, due to a pollution of runoff, we expect that there will be over-enrichment within our system, particularly estuaries, and that will mess up the coastal marine environment. And then the problem of nutrient over-enrichment and eutrophication is already occurring within the Athi-Galana system. All the way from Nairobi, the river is highly polluted. Sometimes the water turns green all the way to Malindi. So this is a problem that also needs a lot of effort in order to be tackled. Next. So there are various causes of water and sediment quality degradation that were identified under the TDA. We talked about the wastewater discharge within our coastal marine environment, discharge from industrial areas, discharge of untreated industrial effluents. We have also the problem of runoff from agricultural areas, industrial areas, and urban areas. We have also, of course, the discharge of sediments from used for wastewater and other areas. We also have the problem of leaching of agrochemicals, fertilizers, and the pesticides from storage facilities, dam sites such as Kibarani, and also the problem of irrigation return flows. If you go to the Tana River Basin, we have quite a good number of irrigation projects there, large-scale irrigation projects, and those particular projects, the major input to support agricultural productivity is the use of fertilizers and pesticides. The Bura and all irrigation scheme, and also the Lower Tana Delta irrigation scheme. The irrigation return flows, they are normally full of fertilizers and the pesticides and other nutrients that enter into the Tana River, and that in turn causes other complications within the river system. Within the coastal system, particularly in urban areas also, we have a major problem when it comes to the collection and disposal of solid waste. And this is the major contributor to marine litter. That has been the major challenge, and I hope that maybe the county governments very soon will do something in order to be able to deal once for all with the problem of disposal of solid waste within our coastal towns and cities. Of course, the problem of public littering of beaches and shoreline is also common. That also needs to be managed by the responsible authorities. Next. So in general, we can note that there are several underlying root causes of degradation of the coastal marine environment, and I'm happy that the author of WIOMSA has already elaborated on some of them, but I can repeat maybe a few of them. And I think the major driver has been increasing population, although some policymakers don't want to be told that increasing population is a problem, but we feel that increasing population pressure is one of the key drivers when it comes to the degradation of the coastal marine environment. In that particular photographs there, put a photograph of Likoni Ferry, 1920s. You can see that that was a ferry that was being used at Likoni. The population that was being served was small population, and I think the coastal marine environment at that time was doing extremely well. But over the years, in the last 100 years, I think the population has grown tremendously. You can see the population at Likoni Ferry. People waiting to cross the ferry. So it means that population is a major issue, and without dealing with the population increase, we cannot be able to tackle the problem of coastal and marine degradation. There is also the problem of poverty and inequality. When people are poor, the focus is not conservation of the marine and coastal environment. Focus on other things, exploitation of resources, and that exploitation leads to degradation of the coastal and marine environment. There's also economic pressure, which is also tied to poverty and inequality. Then inadequate financial resources. This is constraining some of the government departments, some of the government institutions to implement, for example, policies, regulations, and laws related to the management of the coastal and marine environment because they have limited resources to function. We have also lack of alternative livelihood system among the communities. They depend on restricted, sources of income, and that complicates their life. They have to focus on the exploitation of few coastal resources in order to be able to survive. Then there have been the problem of coastal governance weaknesses. Over the years, we have been able to come up with various policies, various strategies, but when it comes to implementation, we have many challenges. Of course, that is tied to the problem of inadequate financial resources. But we need to improve the governance of coastal and marine environment for us to have an impact. Then, of course, the issue of globalization, international trading policies, they're also putting a lot of pressure in terms of inducing certain resource consumption patterns that are not sustainable. The issue of global climate change, I think everybody nowadays is talking about climate change. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that particular area, but it's a major problem within our catchment areas and also within the coastal and marine environment. In the report of the state of the coast, that is the report prepared by NEMA and of course in collaboration with Kemfi, they have also mentioned that the low level of irrigation could also be one of the underlying cause of degradation of the coastal and marine environment within the coastal systems. Next. For us to be able to have significant impacts in terms of controlling land-based resources and activities responsible for marine pollution or degradation of the coastal and marine environment in the region, in our region, that is Kenya, certain things have to be done correctly for us to have significant impact. One of them is that without political will at the highest political level, at national and county level, you may not be able to do everything that will have an impact. So whatever you're doing, you must be able to make sure that you receive the highest political support at both national and the county government level. For projects that have been started for coastal management interventions, make sure that the governor at county level is aware and is part of the process driving the implementation of management interventions. Without that, you will not have any significant impact at grassroots level. It becomes very difficult to have impact. And I'm happy that I've seen in countries where governors have been involved in the implementation of conservation interventions, we have seen a significant impact. Then another thing that we have learned over the years is that it is also very crucial to integrate some of the interventions into the national and county government budgetary and the planning processes. Sometimes we depend too much on the donor funding. After the project is over, then we cannot be able to proceed. But once you integrate some of the conservation and management intervention into national and county government processes, you can be sure after the funding from the donors ends, that particular process will continue. Implementation of the interventions will continue. But if you don't do that, you will just implement your project, and once the project is over, nothing will be done at county or in the national government level. Another lesson that we've been able to learn over the years is that processes driven by national or county government institutions must have, they normally have greater impacts. So make sure that some of these processes, like the process for preparation of the marine spatial plan for the Kenya coast, some of these processes should be driven by institutions, either national or county government institutions with proper mandate and jurisdiction. If you do that, you can be assured that there will be proper avenues for implementation of those particular plans. So engagement of institutions with proper mandate is very critical for success. Then people will be talking about involvement of communities approaches, particularly when it comes to the implementation of conservation measures. Of course, we have been working with communities, but we have not been able to see good, excellent examples of success. There have been serious problems when it came to engagement of communities. Some members of communities have just participated in conservation projects for financial gain only, but not for the conservation of the environment. So I'm suggesting that we need new models of community involvement. If you need to have impact in terms of the conservation of coastal and marine environment, let's try to research on new models of community involvement. Otherwise, if you continue with the kind of approaches that we are using, I don't think we shall have a significant impact. There's a time we did some assessment of some community managed water projects somewhere, and we assessed 1,400 of those community-based projects or management projects. And out of those 1,400, I think less than 10% were working properly. 80% were just problematic. So we need to think ways of engaging, new ways of engaging communities in the conservation of coastal and marine environment. Then another thing that we have learned over the years is that without focusing on the improvement of living standards of communities, it becomes very difficult for you to succeed in the implementation of the coastal and marine interventions. It becomes very difficult. So you have also to target in terms of improving the living standards of people. Otherwise, they not focus on the implementation of conservation measures. Next. So in terms of the marine spatial planning process, we need also to make certain maybe recommendations on what this particular process can take on board in terms of the land-based sources of pollution. My recommendation is that, first of all, we need to understand that the marine spatial planning process is about allocating marine and coastal space for various compatible and incompatible uses. That is the purpose of marine spatial planning. It's about allocating space for use of the coastal marine environment. So we have to think broadly in terms of what needs to be done when it comes to land-based sources of pollution. And my suggestion is that we should be aimed at preventing further degradation of the coastal marine ecosystems or habitats. We should be able to focus the MSP, that is marine spatial planning, on key hotspot areas. It may not be logical for us to focus on the entire coastline. It may not be feasible. So we can just focus on the key hotspot areas, for example, Shanzu, Bamburi, up to Fuzibe area. That particular geographic space, you can focus on that particular area and develop a marine spatial area for that particular locality. You can also focus maybe on another area north of Malindi, Ngomeni area, Katon Lamu area, but it may not be feasible to do marine spatial planning for the entire coastline because you lose the details. Then another recommendation that we can make is that it is going to be essential that before we begin this particular process, we properly demarcate in detail the location of the critical coastal and marine ecosystem, including their current status. For example, if you demarcate, mangroves within the coastline, we should be able to see areas where the mangroves have been degraded, and areas where they are almost of the pristine, within the pristine status. We should be able to show those kinds of spatial distribution within our coastline, within the hotspots. We should be able also to demarcate in detail points of discharge and areas of dispersion of wastewaters and also sewage and litter and also other contaminants within the coastline. We need to see areas where the contaminants are entering our coastal marine areas. I don't think there's been any serious mapping of the discharge points along the Kenya coast to determine where exactly the wastewaters, the sewage, and the litter are entering within the coastal marine environment. This is essential for the production of the marine spatial plan. It is also essential that we also demarcate in detail points and areas of discharge and dispersion of nutrients, including also eutrophic and dead zones, for example, within the Sabaki estuary area, within and the Tana River system. Can we be able to show how the nutrients are discharged into those particular areas and how they're dispersed with those particular areas? And also, we should be able to show maybe location of dump sites, points of entry and dispersion of also solid waste of the dump sites, so that we can be able to intervene properly. Should also be able to demarcate points of river discharges and areas of dispersion of freshwater and regional sediment loam. We should also be able to determine areas of recharge and discharge of groundwater within our coastal areas. The areas along the Kenya coast where groundwater is discharged into the marine environment. Those areas have not been mapped. So when we begin the process of marine spatial planning, we should be able to map those particular areas so that they can be able to inform the planning process. And then we should also be able to demarcate in detail also areas of seawater intrusion in the coastal zone, so that we can also be able to know how we are going to intervene in terms of controlling the problem of seawater intrusion into the coastal groundwater aquifers. And you can see that in my slide there, I've emphasized the demarcation in detail. This is because without a detailed map, you may not be able to have a map that will inform the planning process properly. So we need detailed maps that is marine spatial planning maps, that can inform managers properly. The managers can be able to see at a glance where exactly the problem is located. So we need to locate, we need to demarcate some of these points using, in good detail, so that we can be able to see exactly where the problems are. And we can move, maybe we can move to the next slide. Next slide. So in conclusion, we can note the following, that marine spatial planning should aim at preventing further degradation of the coastal and marine environment. That should be one of the major objectives of the marine spatial planning process. And we say that the process of marine spatial planning is about allocating space for different uses of the coastal and marine environment, and that has to be done correctly. And we are suggesting also that we should focus on the key hotspot areas along the Kenya coast instead of doing MSP for the entire Kenya coastline, because once you do that, you may lose details. You will not be able to provide the details that are required by managers to plan for interventions. Detailed mapping of points and areas of entry and dispersion of the land-based sources of pollution, very, very critical when it comes to the marine spatial planning. And then I must emphasize again, the engagement of relevant and appropriate national and county government institutions is very, very critical when it comes to the marine spatial planning. Without engagement of proper institutions at national and county government level, you may not be able to have proper success that we need for coastal and marine environment. So for the time being, I think I'll stop there. That should be the last slide. Maybe you can go to the last slide, I check. Yep. So I think that it should be the last slide. Thank you very much.